Around the Bead podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world in connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.
Good day and welcome back to Around the Bead podcast. Today we are continuing with our material handling series starring guest Rob to talk about telehandlers, JLG lifts, Gradalls, Skytrax, and the tires that are on them. Rob, welcome back. Are you ready to kick the tires?
Let's go, buddy.
Okay, so these lifts, they're mostly in rental fleets nowadays. United Rentals, Sunbelt, Herc. You know all the names.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost one of the most commoditized tires out there. 1,300, 1,400 24s were the only tires for as long as I've been alive.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about 28-inch. Are those still prevalent today? Is the 1,300 24 going away?
I don't know if it's going away. Obviously, there's so many machines out there that it still exists for.
Mm-hmm.
We still do a good number of them. But, yeah, there's the 1,400 24, and then there's a bevy of other sizes now, right? It's like passenger and light truck tires. I feel like every year they create a new machine. They come out with a new tire size.
Okay, I'm with you. There's more than there used to be.
Yeah.
But what, 370, 75, 28, the 400, 75, 28, and now 1,300, 1,400, 28s?
Yep. And then you've got
17,
15.5,
yeah,
17.5,
okay.
25s.
Yeah.
Yep, and then you've got some of the smaller machines with 12, 16.5 equivalents, and there's all kinds of stuff out there.
All right, fair enough. All of them are foam-filled or solid.
You know, they should be, and we would think they are. But some of them, I guess, you know, the big companies, let's call it United Rentals, Sunbelt.
Yeah.
They're really good at being foam-filled or solid.
Yeah.
When Ahern was doing it, before United Rentals bought them out, and Extreme was manufacturing them, if they came spec'd with air, like a pneumatic tire, they kept it a pneumatic tire. So, but as they've taken over, we've seen more and more of it go to foam-filled or solid.
I heard a rumor that there's OSHA regulation to have aerial lifts have flat-proof tires. Do we have anything on that?
I don't know if there is an OSHA regulation. I mean, it makes sense. Think about it. I mean, you're putting something how far up in the air that weighs how much? What's a flat do to that, you know?
I'm not going to promote government regulation on this show, but I get it. If I was in one of those things, one of the aerial lifts, and a tire went flat, that would be a freaking moment for me.
Yeah. How about we just promote common sense, right?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I like that.
Fair enough. So they're solid. Polyfill is pretty standard nowadays.
Yeah.
What is polyfill for our listeners out there? Foam fill, flat proofing, comes by a bunch of different names, but it is essentially the same thing.
Yeah, bottom line is it's two compounds mixed together to fill up the inside of a tire and essentially create a somewhat hard but cushioned fill mix that essentially takes the air out of the inside of the tire, and the tire can't go flat. Right. So you can run a nail, a stake, whatever piece of rebar into it you want. The tire's still going to hold the same shape.
But what's really cool to me on it, and I think is unique, is it's holding the same air pressure that was desired for that pneumatic tire.
Yes.
Right? So you can fill it with foam, but it is essentially operating at 8 PSI, 55 PSI, whatever the desired PSI was.
Correct. It's not creating some big extra large bubble on a tire or something.
Well, not an extra large bubble or extra stiff. It has a completely different operating purpose, so to speak, compared to a solid tire, which has its set durometer rubber, and it's going to be as stiff as the tire is built.
Exactly.
So polyfill, you're filling two liquids in there. It's very expensive.
Yes.
Very messy process. We'll certainly take this podcast out on the road and show people how messy it can be. one of the questions I've thought is, and you've heard me use this example, is foam filling is so expensive. Yet the tire for telehandlers is really commoditized. It's, hey, I want the cheapest possible option I can get. But the way I'm thinking of it is that's like throwing a 502 in a Civic, right? It doesn't have the structure to support longevity. Wouldn't you want the best possible tire if you're going to put that fixed investment of foam fill into a telehandler tire? You can't get it out. You can't return the foam fill.
Yeah, it depends on how you look at it, right? Because we'll talk about, and I'm going to bring up something we've talked about in previous podcasts. There's retreading, right?
Yeah.
Some people will want to retread with the foam still in there and retread that 1324.
Sure.
Some people, their deal is they want a new tire and new foam every time on that. They want to make sure it's the most secure it possibly is. Regulations have come so far with manufacturers and building tires that they're built to, it seems, to a certain standard that maybe not the cheapest one, but some of the maybe lesser known brands built just as good of a tire that with the foam in it, as long as it holds the bead, is going to do just fine.
Well, it's not a high endurance application.
No,
right? It's
you're not running
speeds.
So
no speed. Weight is. I would probably argue that you have more tire on there than you need for the weight in most situations.
Yeah.
Scrub isn't a thing. So yeah, you don't need a complex compound to answer those questions.
No, the most important part is not getting flats and not having to change tires, period, right?
Yeah.
So
okay, I see your point. I just
Yeah.
think I would, and we obviously in the tire industry don't promote this, but more tread depth, more tread depth, more tread depth, more wear. But that would kind of be my thought process if I was a rental manager. I'm going to spend $500, $600, $1,000 foam filling a tire. I want to put it with the most amount of tread on it, whether I'm recapping it or not.
yeah, and then it's kind of it's user specific too a little bit, because most of the rental companies they're basically looking to keep those in the system for 4 or 5 years, and then they're turning those over and getting new machines and trying to either sell them or ship them off or what have you, right?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing was we had one manufacturer create a solid tire, and it looked great, super meaty, and it was going to wear forever. Well, it turns out it's at least a 7-year tire. The problem with that is the rental company runs it for 5 years, and then they want to turn it over, and that tire just happens to be at a point where they've got to replace it to have a meatier tire on there, and it's so darn expensive with that 7-year tire that they're looking for the cheapest option possible to go put back on there.
So asset management and procurement thought process seems to be something that has certainly impacted the industry and the decisions that are made there.
Yeah.
Right. So you talk about a 7-year lifespan on a tire. I hear this time and time again. Hey, I don't want to spend the money because I'm going to move this equipment to another yard, and I want them to incur that expense.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you have rental managers, equipment managers who understand that investment. Hey, I just spent however many bucks to foam fill tires. That's my asset. Some rental companies keep that asset in the system. Some don't. And so they want to keep that. Whereas it's almost impossible to track that in any system that you have a core, like a battery core.
Yeah, it's something we've always struggled with. Yeah.
Whereas on a solid tire side, I always thought solid tires would just take over rental really quick, because it'd be easy for procurement to understand. Procurement goes in and says, hey, we want everybody to bid on our business. Here's the RFP. All right, you have this much 30 seconds of tread, and this is what it costs, and we're doing cost per 30 second. You guys bid it. But it hasn't taken over.
Yeah. No, it hasn't. Part of it's availability and understanding it, and then expense, right? Because just what we talked about, a lot of these guys are looking for the cheapest tire, and in 9 times out of 10, the solid tire is going to be more expensive.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, some regions, what they'll do, we talked about moving equipment around. Some of the rental companies, I'll talk to a location manager and I'll try to sell them on quality and discuss how this tire will last longer and be safer for their renters and so on and so forth. And a lot of times the answer I get is, well, the problem is if I spend extra money on that, it hits my branch and I pay for it. And then tomorrow, the branch 45 miles away calls and has a rental for it and takes that unit and rents it.
Yeah.
I will never get ROI on the expense on that tire. So why shouldn't I just put the cheapest item on there I can?
Yeah.
So it's kind of an interesting industry. And I guess it completely spins from everything we've talked about so far, right? As far as wear and mileage and everything else, it's just get me by.
Yeah. Well, and so much of it is rebuild.
Yeah.
Right? You're rebuilding it back to the customer, damages, costs. You run an amortization table to see your total maintenance on that equipment and building that into your cost that you ultimately charge your customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another component I was thinking about last night on the solids is pressing them, right? So the two components really. The wheels are much, much more expensive for 28-inch solids, 24-inch solids. And then the presses themselves, we operate in the material handling business. We press forklift tires every single day, across the Western United States. But not all forklift dealers are rental telehandler supporting dealers.
Absolutely.
So the person that has the equipment for the press, right, often isn't big enough to do the telehandler business.
Yep.
And on the other side, there's not enough telehandler presses that can handle telehandler tires in the right locations across the U.S. So if you're a procurement manager for a big rental fleet and you're like, yes, we want to go forward with this tire, there's not enough infrastructure to support it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So who makes solid tires today?
A lot of different companies are making them. Camso, OTR,
Continental, right?
Continental. Yep, they had that 1328 and a couple different options.
Is the 1328 the same thing as the 370, 7528?
It's all interchangeable, right? So just like the 1424 is interchangeable with the 28-inch now, you can move them all around.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a little bit. So the 28-inch stuff, to me, I remember it coming on the scene when Firestone won the JLG contract. So that was the first time that tire had come out. What was pitched to me is that this is attractive to a rental fleet because it's got a narrower sidewall, meaning less opportunity for impact.
Interesting.
That was how they won the contract. Now everybody makes that tire much more economically, and those are the winners in the space. You have OTR with the 1300, 1400, 28. I haven't seen a ton of that. But the low sidewall, we've seen this in certain specialty niches. Titan, obviously, on the ag side. And then also with the advent of 875, 65, 29s, the low sidewall 29-inch fitments for earth mover. Do you think that's the concept? Is the low impact? I mean, do we need to get an engineer on the show to teach us something?
Right. Where's Phil when we need him, right?
Well, Phil will be on the show, for sure.
Yeah. I absolutely think that. I mean, I can't think of any other reason besides people are trying to create patents on a different size or something to, control the market. But yeah, it's the less impact, right? Even though they're solid or foam filled, the less impact we can put on a tire, the longer it will last. Because with the foam fills and the solids, where we seem to have to change them the most frequently is where they're impacting like railroad crossings or some kind of object in the ground and taking a big enough chunk out of the shoulder or the sidewall of them that it can deteriorate their stability, right? So it becomes an issue and we have to get them changed out. So, and then that's when it gets really expensive because you kind of want to keep it matched because most of these machines are four-wheel drive, right? So you start looking at changing something before it needs to be changed and you got to do all four. It gets pretty expensive. Yeah. So, yeah, any impact you can save, the better.
I've been a firm believer that if the wheels ever get standardized, across all platforms that you're going to see a huge change in the industry.
Yeah. Yeah, if everything is on the same wheel across the industry, oh my gosh, and you don't have to worry about offsets and 8-hole versus 10-hole, coin versus flat, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Man, what a difference it would make. And then you could standardize a solid tire that just works, right?
Yeah.
It fits those wheels, and then you can reduce cost on it. So
I think it'd be huge.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell a story real quick. I'm just thinking of this, and this is kind of my own almost BDE, big dog energy moment. But one of my first real serious service calls was a great all job. And it was a foam fill job. The person wanted full new set. So tires, foamed, the wheels, the whole thing. And it was like a 4-hour call. So 4 hours one direction.
Oh, wow.
Boom truck, of course. And I hadn't really done a lot of boom work. And go all the way down there, 4 hours, get to the job site, and it's the wrong freaking wheels.
Oh, God.
So for the listeners that may not be familiar, that's like a few $1,000 mistake on someone's part because you can't unfoam them. That foam is permanent in the tires. Somebody ordered the wrong wheels or somebody gave the wrong information. And that was my whole day, was 4 hours down there. Hey,
Oops, this ain't going to work.
Ain't going to work. And 4 hours back.
Yeah, talk about a loss of a day, right? Gosh.
I mean, the company losing me for the day wasn't the big hit, but the whatever had to happen between the salesperson and the customer on that was probably the biggest loss of the day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah, standardization of wheels, I think, would certainly help solids come along because you could swap them out much easier. And that's something that we've seen the industry be supported by guys like us, other people in the industry that have wheel inventory, can do exchanges relatively easily. But it requires a lot of capital to get started on that.
It absolutely does. And we've worked hard to acquire enough wheels to do full exchange programs, whether it's new tires or solids or foam-filled retreads, right?
Yeah.
So it's something we offer across the board, and it's helped a lot. But, yeah, God, what a different standardization of wheels would make to know that we've got 10 or 12 in each store rather than we've got 4 of these and 8 of these and 4 of those. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing up the movement of equipment and the timeline on this, and it's making me think about you and the data team. We don't have that data on how long 7-year solids are running, how long a 1424 recapped on its second time with this foam fill is running. Is that data even possible to get? Is that a mission that we're just going downhill on?
It's when we talk about the ease of acquiring data, it would definitely be the harder one out there, right? Because the machine moves so slow, the tire wears so slow. It'd be a long-term kind of investment in that data to try to monitor it. I think it's the reason you see them moving just to the cheapest tire, right? Because no one has ever taken the time to really create data on how long a foam-filled or a solid telehandler tire lasts.
You know where we could do it is we could do it in Hawaii.
Yeah?
And the reason I'm saying that is because they're not going to move it out of the state. They're probably not going to even move it off island.
Ever.
Yeah, it's not cost
It's
effective.
not a
Now,
5-year
to move
machine
something
there.
from Texas to Missouri, where you're not going to be able to track it anymore, that happens all the time. But the inventory in Hawaii it's going to take us a lot longer. It's a lot less hours. It's going to give us some different data because of the lava rock. But at least it's not going to move.
Yeah, but we're there and they're there, and it's not going anywhere, right?
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea.
I'd be interested if anybody in the rental industry is even interested in that data. Maybe it's not a priority for them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either, to be honest. I've never been asked like why this tire or why that tire.
Yeah.
Really, to be honest, the calls that come from the rental industry are, hey, I need a set for this telehandler, and okay, what's the machine make and model? Here it is. It's got 1424s on it. yes or no. I have a set or don't, and I can get them to you tomorrow. No one's ever stopped to say, what brand tire is that? And it's
why
how
it's
long
why
will it last me?
it's why most major manufacturers have left the space altogether.
Yeah. Well, and the other side of that is, I think when telehandlers were new into the world, you saw more construction companies owning their own and independent contractors owning their own.
Yeah.
Where it's not feasible to do that anymore. You just rent it, use it for the 2-week or 3-month job you have, and then return them and let somebody else maintain it and worry about it for the next guy.
The equipment is astronomical in price. I mean,
Yeah.
You have to be massive in order to justify a fleet of great alls.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so solid tires versus foam-filled grader tires, telehandler tires. Is there an application where one does better than another, you think?
In the telehandler industry, it depends on how rough the environment or the surfaces are, is where you might look to do something different, right? If there's a lot of if it's a demolition type environment that the machine's going to be working in, taking down building where they've already broken up concrete and there's rebar and sharp edges, I'd probably lean towards a solid tire, right? That's going to withstand it a little bit better. Where a guy is moving a machine, we'll do the same thing on skid steers, right?
Yeah.
So not to completely change subject, but if you go to a skid steer and you look at solid foam fill or a pneumatic tire, take, for instance, a guy in an asphalting paving application, right? Yeah. They're on hot asphalt. They're on concrete, demo type stuff all day long. They want a solid tire with as much deep, thick rubber as they can possibly get, but with aperture holes to be nice to their operators, right?
So I want to talk about the operators, but as far as the application, I feel like all the marketing for solid 28-inch, 24-inch telehandler tires is in this perfect warehouse, right? Yeah. Where they're just building a new Amazon distribution center or something, and they're just running on a concrete pad. Yeah. So I don't see the solids in the heavy-duty applications. I'm obviously not everywhere, or severe applications, I should say. But the operator, I would love to hear. Hopefully, operators are listening. Mm-hmm. If you are, I want to hear your opinion on how does it feel to drive a solid tire telehandler versus a foam fill.
I've operated a couple, but where we've operated them was not on perfect concrete surfaces.
No, really?
No. In my experience, I did work for CAMSO, and we used to do something called the CAMSO Experience, right? So one of the events we did was we rented out a dirt bike track in Denver. Yeah. And then we rented equipment from United Rentals, and we put solids on some, foam on the other, pneumatic on the other, and we drove them in real world environments to understand, and we had customers come out and do the same. Yeah. It's definitely interesting with the solid. It's a stiffer ride for sure. The foam does give a little bit. It's not extremely noticeable just because the machine's so slow, right? You're not getting up to 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour with these machines. You're kind of creeping.
If there are operators who have operated them 30 miles an hour, please chime in.
Let's hear about it, right? So yeah, it absolutely makes a difference. Obviously, your pneumatic is going to be the softest, right? Because the tire gets to flex so much. But I personally like the stability of the solid tire because when you're picking up a pallet of bricks and putting it 30 feet up in the air, I want to feel stiff and solid. You don't want to sit on a chair that's, got a one leg a little shorter than the rest, right? And you're teeter-tottering. Oh, man. Ugh. Yeah. So, I like the solid tires on them.
Well, before I forget, there are technically different types of foam fill, right?
There are.
Okay, so it's largely a commoditized game. Hey, what's the cheapest you could possibly get? Mm-hmm. But they do have some that make different durometer.
Yeah, so you have your standard foam fill, and then you have a heavy duty foam fill.
Yeah.
So typically
Isn't there an ultra soft too for ag? Didn't someone create that?
I believe so. I don't have a lot of experience with that. Most of mine is in the telehandler, skid steer, or loader applications.
Yeah.
When you go into a heavier duty or loader application, you want a heavy duty foam, right? Because of the amount of flex that tire offers, it needs to withstand it.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's different, and then there's different ways of putting foam in a tire, right?
Yeah.
And there's ways to cheapen up the amount of foam that goes into a tire.
Okay, so for viewers' clarity, well, I'm going to group them into 3 categories. You have what's called pure fill, which is just both liquids in, fill it to the max, done, over with.
Yes.
Then you have the OE version, which is that mixed with rubber crumb, right? So at these facilities that are producing foam-filled tires for original equipment, they are mixing it with rubber crumb in order to make it more economical. And then on the dealer distributor side, it's mixing pure fill with previous pure fill that's ground up, used grounds, so to speak, mixing it together. And there's different percentages with that.
Yeah, it's a blend. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. But as far as the fill itself, there are different types. It's just I just haven't heard anybody have them in stock in order to offer them. I mean, they exist in websites only.
Yeah.
But for the most part, there's a medium fill that everybody uses.
Yeah, basically everyone pretty much uses the standard fill, and then you're doing it one of the 2 ways, like you said, at the dealers. They're either doing the blend or they're doing virgin fill.
Right.
And then you run into the instance where some people will do what they call a chunk fill.
Yep.
Where they'll essentially try to very neatly cut the foam fill out of a used tire and then place it back into a new tire and then fill liquid around it to fill it up. So there's a couple different ways to do it, each with their own advantages or disadvantages, whether it be, mostly all relating to cost.
So perhaps my final question, does foam filling telehandler tires exist in 20 years?
From a guy who has to deal with it, I hope not.
So, and you've heard me say this about retreading. You've heard me say this other parts of the industry. If the customer's unhappy, and if most of the supply chain down to the customer's unhappy, then it's ready to be broke and get fixed. I don't think the customers are unhappy. I think rental yards are pretty happy with that process. But maybe we're not hearing them. Maybe they are frustrated with the turnaround time on foam fill, or the pricing, or just how the whole operation works. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little bit of a nightmare for them when the exchange isn't readily available.
Right.
I mean, you think about it. If your dealer doesn't have an exchange set up for you, you're essentially putting that machine on blocks.
Yeah.
So you take it up, put it on blocks, take the wheels and tires off on Monday. Your dealer picks it up on Tuesday. They've got to then on Wednesday cut the old foam and tire off and remount a new one.
It's a ton of labor.
And then start filling it on Thursday. Then it's got to lay flat for 48 hours before you can deliver it and give the foam a chance to harden. So you put the machine down for a week, right?
Easily.
Yeah, the advantages of the solid is they typically come as assemblies, and you're ready to rock, and you can or you cut off and press the new one on, and you're back out the next day. You eliminate that 48-hour wait period after it's foamed.
Yeah.
So the solid has its advantage where it is a little bit more expensive in some spots right now. It definitely has unique advantages.
Yeah. I still think the service footprint, no matter what the solution is a gap there. People have tried to build these giant foam fill centers and supply the whole nation. It's so heavy. It's so big. Once freight costs come into play, it's unsustainable. We've talked about the solids and how you need the heavy-duty press in order to do it. There's not enough business out there to sustain one press just with 24-inch solids.
Correct.
So it's a service challenge there and a product challenge.
Yeah. And I think those reasons are why you typically see one, what I'll call real player in the service industry per market.
Per market,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, just
Economies of
because
scale.
everybody can't afford to invest and try to do the whole thing.
No.
So,
Well, certainly a lot of things we identified for improvement there, but to me, it's one of the most rewarding industries to be a part of because you see telehandlers everywhere. And so when you see them building football stadiums and warehouses and you're driving by on the freeway and you went out and did that service call, it feels like you built part of that structure.
yeah, it's why we're here, right? To keep America running and part of that infrastructure. It's just a lot of fun to know that, by rushing through that stuff and taking care of it for those people that you're helping move us forward.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, audience, listeners, viewers, you got comments on telehandlers, rental industry, put them in the comments. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time on Material Handling Around the Beat. Let's air this one up.
Thanks, Joe.
Around the Beat podcast, tire talk for trucking, mining, agriculture, and more. Your home for fleet solutions, aiming to inform, pioneer, and entertain the tire world in connected industries. Sponsored by East Bay Tire, keeping essential industries moving forward.